When we think about the great turning points of history, moments that reshaped entire regions and altered the flow of civilization, one such event took place more than 1,300 years ago along the banks of the Indus River. It is the story of a young man, just 17 years old, who led an army across the deserts of Makran and into the fertile lands of Sindh. His name was Muhammad bin Qasim, and his journey was not just a military campaign, but the beginning of a new chapter in South Asian history. To understand how a teenager came to command thousands of soldiers and change the destiny of a region, we must first step back in time to the early 8th century, to a world where empires stretched across continents, where trade routes connected distant lands, and where faith and politics were deeply intertwined. The Arabian Peninsula had, only a few decades earlier, witnessed the rise of Islam under the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. After his passing, the message of Islam spread rapidly across Arabia, Persia, Central Asia, and North Africa. By the time of the Umayyad Caliphate based in Damascus, the Arab Empire stretched from the Atlantic Ocean in the west to the borders of India in the east. Yet, for all its vastness, the empire still faced one final frontier: the land beyond the Makran coast, the ancient and fabled region of Sindh. Sindh was not unknown to the Arabs. Long before the conquest, merchants from Arabia had traded with ports along the western coast of India. Spices, textiles, and precious stones traveled across the Arabian Sea. Arab geographers spoke of the river Indus and the land of Hind as places of wealth and mystery, but trade was not the only connection. Small Muslim communities already existed along the coast, remnants of early traders and travelers. However, political control was another matter entirely. At that time, Sindh was ruled by Raja Dahir, a Hindu ruler of the Brahmin dynasty. His capital lay at Alore, near modern Sukur, and his kingdom stretched across the Indus Valley. To the west lay the province of Makran, already under Muslim control after earlier campaigns. Between these two lands lay centuries of mistrust, occasional raids, and failed diplomatic exchanges. The spark that ignited the final confrontation came from the sea. According to most historical sources, a ship carrying Muslim women and children, pilgrims returning from Sri Lanka, was attacked by pirates off the coast of Debal, a major port in Sindh. The pirates captured the passengers and looted the goods, some of which were reportedly gifts meant for the Caliph himself. When news of this outrage reached Hajjaj bin Yusuf, the powerful governor of Iraq and eastern provinces under the Umayyad Caliphate, he was furious. He demanded that Raja Dahir, as ruler of Sindh, punish the pirates and return the captives. Dahir, however, claimed that the pirates were beyond his control and not under his authority. This response enraged Hajjaj, who saw it as an excuse. He wrote back in anger, accusing Dahir of harboring criminals and defying the caliphate. After several failed diplomatic attempts, Hajjaj resolved to take direct action. He had already tried twice before to subdue Sindh, first sending Ubaidullah bin Naban, then Basil bin Tahir, but both campaigns failed, largely due to the harsh terrain and strong local resistance. This time, Hajjaj decided to send someone different, someone young, determined, and loyal. That person was his own relative, Muhammad bin Qasim. At just 17 years of age, Muhammad bin Qasim was already known for his intelligence, discipline, and deep sense of faith. Raised in the city of Taif, he had grown up in a world shaped by the ideals of the early Islamic state: justice, unity, and courage. Hajjaj saw in him not just a warrior, but a strategist who could unite the army, respect the local population, and establish stable governance. In 711 CE, Muhammad bin Qasim set out from Shiraz with an army of 6,000 Syrian and Iraqi soldiers, accompanied by camels, horses, and a fleet of siege engines. The journey across the deserts of Makran was brutal, scorching heat by day, freezing cold by night, and little water in between. Yet the young commander kept morale high, leading by example, marching beside his men rather than riding in comfort. When the army reached the borders of Sindh, they first captured the frontier town of Dabal, the very port from which the pirates had struck. The city was strongly fortified, its high walls guarded by archers and its harbor protected by ships. For days, the Muslims laid siege to the city, constructing massive wooden catapults known as manjaniks. Hajjaj had sent a special one named the Bride, so large that it could hurl stones weighing hundreds of kilograms. Muhammad bin Qasim's tactics were a blend of patience and precision. He sent letters offering peace in exchange for submission, but the defenders refused. Finally, the siege engines were positioned and the attack began. Stones thundered against the walls, arrows darkened the sky, and ladders were raised. After days of fighting, the city fell. The great temple of Dabal, which also served as a fortress, was destroyed, and the Muslim flag was raised over its ruins. The captured ports reopened under new administration, and prisoners were treated according to the customs of war at that time. From Dabal, the young commander moved inland toward Naran, Sewan, and Brahmanabad. Along the way, some towns resisted, while others surrendered peacefully. Muhammad bin Qasim's policy was consistent. Those who resisted faced battle, while those who surrendered were treated fairly and allowed to maintain local authority in exchange for tribute. He was careful to protect civilians and religious leaders who accepted peace. By 712 CE, the stage was set for the decisive confrontation, the battle against Raja Dahir himself. The two armies met near the banks of the Indus, close to a place historians call Aror or Rawar. Dahir's forces included war elephants, armored cavalry, and local militias. The scene must have been dramatic. Two civilizations facing each other across the river, one defending its homeland, the other representing a new world order. Muhammad bin Qasim's forces crossed the river under heavy fire. The elephants of Dahir's army initially caused panic among the Arab ranks, their massive size and noise terrifying the horses. But Muhammad quickly adapted. He ordered his archers to target the elephants' mahouts, the riders guiding them. As the elephants turned wild, chaos spread in Dahir's formation. In the midst of the confusion, a unit of Muslim cavalry charged toward Dahir's elephant. Arrows rained upon the Sindhi king. Struck down, Dahir fell from his mount, bringing an end to his reign and to the Brahmin dynasty of Sindh. The fall of Dahir marked a turning point. His family fled, some to Kashmir, others to nearby regions, but the resistance continued in scattered pockets. Muhammad bin Qasim pursued his campaign methodically, capturing Alor, Brahmanabad, and Multan. In each city, he established administrative centers, appointed governors, and ensured that the conquered populations were treated within the framework of Islamic law. Non-Muslims were granted dhimmi status, protected people, allowed to practice their religion and maintain their traditions in exchange for a tax called jizya. The young general's rule was marked by efficiency and tolerance. He respected local customs and sought the cooperation of native officials. Hindu Brahmins and Buddhist monks were not expelled or persecuted. Instead, they were often retained in administrative positions. Arabic began to blend with local languages, creating new forms of expression. Markets flourished, trade routes reopened, and Sindh slowly became a bridge between the Arab world and the Indian subcontinent. But the story of Muhammad bin Qasim does not end with victory. It ends with tragedy. Shortly after his conquest, political turmoil erupted in the Umayyad Empire. Caliph Walid died, and his successor, Caliph Suleiman, was no ally of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, Muhammad's mentor. When Hajjaj himself passed away, Muhammad bin Qasim lost his greatest protector. The new caliph, distrustful of Hajjaj's loyalists, ordered Muhammad bin Qasim to return to Iraq. Obedient as ever, the young commander complied, unaware of the fate that awaited him. Upon his arrival, he was imprisoned under false charges, accused of misconduct, and later executed. He was only 20 years old. Thus ended the life of one of history's youngest and most remarkable generals. A man who had marched across deserts, built bridges across cultures, and changed the course of a civilization before he was even old enough to be called a man. Yet his legacy lived on. The conquest of Sindh was not merely a military achievement. It was the beginning of Islam's long and complex history in South Asia. From Sindh, the new faith spread slowly but steadily through trade, marriage, and the peaceful work of scholars and Sufis. The cities Muhammad bin Qasim founded, like Mansoura, became centers of learning and commerce. Sindh became known as Bab-ul-Islam, the gateway of Islam. For centuries after his death, poets, historians, and rulers remembered Muhammad bin Qasim as both conqueror and reformer. Arab chroniclers praised his discipline and fairness. Persian historians admired his courage. Even local legends remembered him as a figure who brought change, a young man caught between duty and destiny. If we pause to reflect on his story, we find it filled with contradictions, a tale of conquest and coexistence, of youth and leadership, of triumph and tragedy. How could someone so young bear such responsibility? How did he manage to command an army in a foreign land, win battles, and still show restraint and fairness to those he conquered? Some historians argue that his success was due to the strong structure of the Umayyad Empire, which provided discipline and unity. Others believe it was his personal character, his humility, his intelligence, and his ability to learn from local traditions. Perhaps it was both. Whatever the reason, Muhammad bin Qasim's campaign stands out in history not just for its scale, but for its method, combining military precision with administrative wisdom. Over time, the political control of Sindh shifted from Arab governors to local dynasties, and eventually to powers like the Ghaznavids and Ghurids. But the foundation laid by Muhammad bin Qasim remained. It was under his rule that Islam first took root in South Asian soil, not as an alien force, but as part of a growing cultural mosaic. When we look at the region today, at the blend of languages, traditions, and faiths, we can still trace its roots back to that first encounter in 712 CE. The story of Muhammad bin Qasim reminds us that history is never simple. It is not just the tale of victors and vanquished, but of the ideas and interactions that survive long after the battles are over. As the sun sets over the Indus River, one can still imagine that young general standing at the edge of a conquered city, looking not with pride, but with contemplation, wondering what future his actions might bring. And now, as we reflect upon his journey, we must ask ourselves, how do we define true victory? Is it the conquest of land or the building of understanding between people? Is it power or the legacy one leaves behind? Perhaps in the end, Muhammad bin Qasim's greatest achievement was not the fall of a kingdom, but the rise of a connection, a bridge between Arabia and India, between two worlds that would forever shape each other.